Okay, have you ever stopped and wondered how a company that pretty much just made parts for video games suddenly became one of the most powerful, most important companies on the entire planet? Well, you're about to find out. This is the wild story of a company that was always just 30 days from going broke, made a billion-dollar bet that took decades to pay off, and somehow ended up building the very engine for the entire AI revolution. So let's dive in and see how they pulled it off. To really get the scale of what we're talking about, let's just start with this one single number: $5 trillion. By 2025, that's the kind of market value we're looking at for NVIDIA. It's a number so huge it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. We're talking about a valuation that puts it in the league of the most valuable companies in the history of the world, worth more than the entire economies of most countries. It's just staggering. And that, of course, leads us to the big central question of this whole explainer. How in the world did this happen? I can tell you it was not a straight line. This was definitely not an overnight success story. It's a tale of near bankruptcy, some absolutely genius pivots, and being in the right place at the exact right time with a piece of tech nobody else had even thought of. So let's solve this mystery together. To really understand how we get to that almost unimaginable multi-trillion-dollar number, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going all the way back to the beginning, to a place that couldn't possibly be further from the shiny headquarters and the massive data centers of today. That's right. Not a Silicon Valley garage, not some fancy university lab, but a Denny's. In San Jose, California, you had three engineers, Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski, and Curtis Preem, sitting in a booth with just $40,000 and one big idea: that graphics-based computing was the future. They had this belief that video games weren't just for fun, they were the killer app that could actually fund the research needed to solve huge computational problems down the line. But that grand vision, it pretty much immediately slammed right into a brick wall of reality. I mean, the early days of NVIDIA were not glamorous. Not at all. They were just a constant, desperate scramble for survival. This wasn't just a bump in the road, it was a near-death experience for the company right out of the gate. Just look at this timeline of near disasters. Their very first chip, the NB1, it was a total flop. Then, a massive deal to make the graphics chip for the Sega Dreamcast console, it completely fell apart. Sega went with a competitor, and NVIDIA was basically left for dead. But then, in this pivotal moment, Sega's president, who actually believed in them, convinced his company to invest $5 million. As Jensen Huang later put it, that money gave us 6 months to live. So, with the clock ticking and literally 1 month of cash left in the bank, they bet everything they had on a new chip, the Riva 128. And amazingly, it was a massive success. It sold 1 million units in just 4 months and saved the company from disappearing completely. And this wasn't just a one-time crisis. That feeling, that constant pressure of being on the edge, it became part of their DNA. For years, Jensen Huang would literally start internal meetings with those exact words. It created this culture of insane urgency, a kind of paranoia that forced them to constantly innovate because they always knew that failure was just one bad move away. So after surviving all of that, you'd think they'd play it safe, right? Just focus on making better and better gaming chips. But no. Instead, they made this massive, totally counterintuitive bet that would cost them over $1 billion and confuse the heck out of Wall Street for years. It was a bet that would, eventually, change everything. That bet was something called CUDA. Now here's the really important part. CUDA isn't a chip, it's software. It's basically a special language that let programmers unlock the thousands of tiny little processors inside a graphics chip for things other than just making video games look cool. Back then, literally nobody was asking for this. It was a solution in search of a problem. But NVIDIA had a hunch that this was the key to the entire future of computing. And to really get why this was so important, you gotta understand the difference between a CPU and a GPU. Think of it like this. A CPU, the brain in a normal computer, is like a single brilliant genius. It can solve really hard problems one at a time, very, very quickly. A GPU, on the other hand, is totally different. It's like an army of thousands of workers. Now, each individual worker isn't a genius, but they can all do a simple task at the exact same time. This is called parallel processing. And believe me, it is the absolute key to this whole story. So for years, CUDA was just this niche thing, used by scientists and researchers. But then something big happened. A whole new field of computing just exploded onto the scene. And it turned out that this army of workers was the perfect and maybe the only tool for the job. The AI revolution had finally arrived. This right here, This is the moment where everything just clicks into place. Researchers figured out that training an AI, which is basically just showing it millions of examples and having it make tiny adjustments over and over and over again, was exactly the kind of simple, repetitive job that an army of GPU workers was perfect for. Suddenly, by using NVIDIA's GPUs with their CUDA software, the time it took to train AI models went from weeks down to hours. It was like going from a horse and buggy straight to a rocket ship. And the result of that breakthrough? Well, this chart says it all. Because NVIDIA had spent a whole decade building the CUDA platform when no one else was, they were the only company with the hardware and the software ready to go. They had a 10-year head start on the entire world. And because of that, they captured over 80% of the market for AI chips. They didn't just catch the AI wave, they had spent 10 years building the surfboard. And the reason this matters to you is that their technology is now, well, it's everywhere. Every single time you use something like ChatGPT, you are using NVIDIA's hardware. But it goes so much deeper than that. Their chips are powering major breakthroughs in medicine and drug discovery. They're the brains inside self-driving cars. They're in advanced robots, and they're even helping us predict the weather more accurately. Which brings us to today. The world has developed this almost bottomless hunger for artificial intelligence, which of course means there's a bottomless hunger for the one company that makes the chips that make it all possible. I mean, this quote just says everything, doesn't it? You have two of the most powerful billionaires on the planet, guys who run enormous tech companies, literally begging for more chips. It just goes to show you that NVIDIA isn't just another supplier anymore. They are the gatekeepers to the future of tech, and everyone, no matter how big and powerful they are, has to go through them. And get this, it gets even crazier. The demand for these AI chips, these GPUs, and their sheer value is so high right now that they are being shipped around in armored cars, like they're gold bars or stacks of cash. This isn't just a computer component anymore. It's become a precious resource that is fundamentally reshaping our world. So from a Denny's diner booth to armored cars, what an unbelievable journey. But it leaves us with one final, really critical question. We are building the entire next chapter of human history, the age of AI, on a foundation that is mostly supplied by one single company. What are the implications of that? What does it mean for innovation, for competition, for all of us when one company basically holds the keys to the future? It's a question we're all going to have to grapple with. If this explainer gave you something to think about, don't forget to subscribe, activate that bell, and hit the like button. We'll see you in the next one.